we spoke about the wild boar.
Yes.
Something interesting that I actually won a beer for, a pint, because when it was found I said, what do you think it is?
Yeah.
And the other person said, I think it's, well, the question is to you, what do you think this is?
Okay, so should we give like a few seconds guessing time?
5, 4, 3,
2,
1.
Mystery.
Mystery. So what do you think it is?
Well, when I first saw it, I thought something hoggy, piggy. I definitely thought not a horse, because that's nothing like a horse. But in fact,
it's a horse.
It's a horse.
So the only reason I wanted a pint is
Yeah.
because I saw the front tooth here, the incisor,
Yeah.
and it's the typical abrasion
Yeah.
that like cows or horses have, because they keep chewing
They grind, yeah.
the grind,
exactly.
and
they're
therefore
always together, and yeah.
in a rotational, so you see
Yeah.
that this is flat. But then in the back you have these two canines,
Yeah.
and I just thought like it can't be a horse, and
That's
then I thought,
what
okay,
threw
it's a
me.
horse.
Yeah.
It is a horse.
It is a horse.
And
It's
then
a horse.
again, obsessed by what I found, I started reading about it. And actually, people that today, have horses, they said, of course they have canines, and
Right.
you need to file
You
the
file them
canines.
down.
The horse orthodontists
Right.
are actually like a horse spending dentistry more than a man throughout his life,
Oh my goodness
and
me.
it's crazy.
That is, and so if you've got a horse, it needs to regularly go to the orthodontist to have its canines worked. And now I know horse person number one I can think of, Monica. Have you talked to her much?
I did, and she
That's,
said, "Of course they have canines." Like,
So
sorry, Monica.
that is Monica Butling Smith. She's on Instagram. I'll put her details up.
And by the way, she found recently, talking about horses,
The horsehair?
she found the horsehair.
Yeah, the horsehair.
And it's a long
Yeah,
rope, and
yeah.
it's absolutely stunning.
There is one that's coming out. Yeah, around
Somewhere.
somewhere. And I think Anna Borzello has got a nice bit of horsehair as well. But yeah, Monica definitely. I think horses.
The queen of horses.
Queen of horses. Okay, so moving on from that one.
I think just randomly, probably.
Yeah, we're kind of.
Shall we go back
let's
into
go.
the few little work
a few
bits?
worked bits, because they are exquisite. They really are, and they're different ages, aren't they? They're
Different ages. We're ranging probably within 500 years between from
Right.
each other.
Yeah.
I will start from one of the most recent one. Is actually this one, which is a tool. I
this-
believe it's late Georgian to Victorian.
Yeah, so it's mid to late 1700s to
To-
early to 1830-ish.
Even the end of 1800s, I would
Yeah.
say, like late Victorian as well, because
okay.
there are examples that go throughout the whole period.
Yeah, and this for me, I think is delightful. It is just exquisite. So this would be in a nail kit.
It's in a nail kit, so you would have this part
Yeah.
where you would which I should use it because of my black mud in between my fingers, that you would use to scrape out any dirt from underneath.
Yeah, yeah.
And I believe the same would be for this one, where you just scoop
Yeah,
it out,
then
and the
you've got
cuticles as well,
cuticles,
probably.
yeah. I mean, this is, and it's just the patina and the kind of, it's just so smooth and beautiful. And this, would have been in someone's, in a purse or
There would
in
probably be a proper nail
case,
kit that you would
yeah.
bring. And I believe, two examples I found on the internet, is that
Yeah.
in this part here, you
Yeah.
probably had a bit of a mother of pearl
So you think there
as
was
a
an
decoration.
inlaid,
There was an
yeah.
inlaid element to
I
make
mean,
it
that-
pretty.
Yeah, and my favourite bit, apart from this like dainty point, this scoop here
Yeah.
is just, love it.
It's really lovely.
Okay, so there are a few more lovely bits down here,
Yeah, they kind
decorated.
of close this wood part, and I will pick them up. So there will be this
Yeah,
pin, and we have a part of a bone knife
So, yeah.
blade.
yeah.
And I will put them all in my hand, and then we can kind
Yeah,
of look at them
perfect.
together. Then we have this, which
Look
is
at
a
this.
hand-decorated part of a fan.
It does, yeah, I was going to say a fan.
And then we have a piece of a medieval
Yeah.
box, and this is the veneer that was put on the outside.
Over the wood of the...
And then the last thing, which when I found this, I started screaming, and someone that was walking by thought that I was dying, and she just said, "Are you okay?"
I found a bone die.
I found a bone die.
I've never found one either, so I understand. I mean, you have now, but yeah.
I was extremely
It's-
excited. So
yeah.
the age of these, right? a little quiz. For those that know a bit about mudlarking, they may have guessed, but this is the probably oldest piece in here. It's a Roman. And it's a Roman hairpin.
Bit of hairpin there.
And it's quite nice because it doesn't look broke. It's quite small.
You think that's the whole thing?
I believe
it's just
so.
Undecorated. Yeah, I can't see a joining part.
No.
So I think you're right with that.
I think it's undecorated.
Yeah.
Then we moved, I would say, into this one, which is medieval. And you know, the Museum of London has a whole box in their exhibition. You know, the back, because it was a veneer, it didn't need to be
So you can see
worked.
again, like on that rib piece.
Absolutely. It comes from a rib piece like the one you showed earlier. And you see this kind of ring and dot decoration, which is typical of medieval
classic design. And even from Roman.
You know, that's the thing. It has been utilized throughout the centuries. And in fact...
You've got some there.
This is most likely a part of a feather curling knife.
Yeah.
So when you were making hats and you needed curled feathers, you would use this. And like a bit, you know, this one we saw before for the pages, you know, it doesn't damage the object, it just makes it curly.
That's right.
So this one, though, you see there is still again the ring and dot decoration.
Yeah.
And though this is, you know, probably 17th to 18th century, so it's, and the same I would say for this bone.
And I mean, this is so...
The detail of it.
That's exquisite. And it could almost be like a really contemporary design, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
With taking influence
with
from a
almost
Georgian.
like, to me, it reminds me of the War of the Worlds.
An
eye.
Me too.
Alien.
Yeah, absolutely does. It's very Wellesian eyes on the stalks and... Yeah,
but someone else saw it and he says, "Oh, but that looks like a flower." And I said, "Oh my God, my brain is so
your mind's
derailed."
Yeah, I think it is a flower, but when I look at it, it does to me look like an eye with like a blinking eyelid. And
but I mean, we got 2,000 years gap between these items. I mean, the bones I didn't say is post-medieval.
Yeah.
You know, it could be anything between, I would say, 17th to 19th century.
So, yeah, exactly. So what an extravagant piece of fan this is here. I love this. And then we've got this dot and circle and this whole array. I mean, it's a real tide traveling real selection, isn't it, through the ages.
And to me, like these objects, if you look, every single line has been made by one individual, like 400 years ago, that spent his time carving this specific object. And to me, this is why bone is so special. It comes from, you know, animals, and has been worked, and it's a one-of-a-kind piece that nobody else has.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely there. They are just such special pieces. I love this veneer here as well. And this circle, the dot and circle pattern that sort of permeates
through centuries.
So it's special.
It's clearly very, very appealing to human nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because even cultures that have not been in touch with each other have used it.
Yeah, and the trend of it goes across rivers, oceans,
it does.
mountains.
It's true. It's one of these repetitive items through human history.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, so we were talking about older finds, older bone finds, and this is a real treasure. So you'll have to talk me through this.
So when I first found it, you know, you never know what you pick up.
Yeah.
And when I collected it, the only thing I saw was these threads here.
Yeah.
Which I thought it was the result of someone trying to make a handle for a knife.
Yeah.
Because I saw the hole over here.
Yeah.
And I thought they got bored and they just chucked it away. Because it was a day where I didn't find anything else, I took it home.
I mean, if I picked this up, I would be beside myself with excitement.
But if you knew what it was, though, no?
No, I mean, not even. Because I can see that this here, you can't tell really from far away, but when you look closely, this here, this design, you find on all sorts of things like bone, apple corers or corers, and fids, which are splicing tools for separating rope. You find this kind of crisscross. So I'd immediately think, oh my God, that's
and then
so
though
cool.
I looked around and you see, it kind of sometimes is present somewhere it's not. So I just thought, you know what, let's skip it.
So it's not consistent all the way around. It's on the higher up parts of the bone.
Only.
It's deeper, and then
it disappears in the grooves.
Yeah.
So it feels like it was made by something only in the more prominent portion of the bone. Then I went home, I washed it. Something else I noticed is the central part is the one more in relief.
Yeah.
The rest of it has been carved now, not with one tool like this, but say that I pick something, right? With something that was just like a chisel that was just creating all these grooves from both sides. And you see that it really started from here going down. In fact, it's not regular.
I can see that. Oh,
and
so that is the raised bit is how it would have been, and then it's been cut away above and below.
Above and below to leave this part in relief. You know, I've actually found an archaeological publication about this, and two other Mudlarks told me, oh, I found an identical one.
So you put this up online and said, not sure what it is.
I don't know what it is. Part of the humbleness of Mudlarks is to admit, I have no idea what this is.
Precisely.
Can you help me?
The amount of people who might say, oh, that's something, and they know something that we,
They know there's someone that knows someone that knows someone.
Exactly.
And in this case, a Mudlark, I think it was either Guy or Mark.
Right.
Apologies, guys. Either of you, send me a message saying, this, I found a publication, this seems to be an Iron Age bobbin.
That's so cool.
So I started investigating, and there are several sites, archaeological sites, where identical items have been found. And what makes it more kind of plausible is that the marks that you were showing here, right? These are made by threads that were attached to it. And in fact, the one that was found by Alan Murphy
has got one of these,
and he's
even more detailed.
The marks that has been used and used and used, and the marks it feels like has been used for ages, and it's beautifully smoothened.
So the question is, so it was a thread going round. Is that what it? So it was a thread. So what is it?
It's an Iron Age bobbin.
A bobbin. So an Iron Age bobbin, we're saying. And how would it be working?
So there would be, if I understood correctly, there would be the thread would be around it. It would be hanging, and then you will move the bobbin.
That's right. Yeah. So as you're weaving.
As you're weaving around,
I don't know
that's
how,
why
I'm just doing the shape.
It was having like this. Now, why was it cord?
Because it was fitted onto.
The answer is I don't know.
Right. So a bobbin usually, even modern bobbins now, I think they fit onto a pin.
Perfect.
And that's how they work. I'm not really sure. I know a man you can ask, the bobbin master.
Perfect. Bobbin master.
The bobbin guy.
I'll come and ask you.
He would love it, I'm sure. Maybe it's too early for him. Who knows? That is.
Closing this, we got the most typical bone handles. This is ivory with the same pattern that we described
I love
before.
That little nipple on there as well. Isn't that interesting?
And you see this crisscrossing, which is quite typical of the ivory that we talked about before.
You're right there.
Right? And then you have the Vivianite in this bone handle that is broken, unfortunately.
I've got that's a pistol grip handle, isn't it?
Oh no, I think it's a knife or a fork.
Oh no, but the design of the handle. Yeah.
I apologize. Absolutely.
I think so. It probably would have curved up there a bit. I've got one at home. I didn't bring it, but it's much more like that. And in fact, the one I've got is a fork. I'll see if I can find a little picture of it stick up on the screen.
And this needs to be restored. I have something like 7 or 8 shoes under restoration, so this has to wait. But as soon as I finish the shoes, I will move into this one. And composite items are really hard to be restored.
Yeah, goodness me. I mean, that's iron, isn't it?
Whatever abrades the iron, it destroys, the bone and vice versa.
It spreads and leaks. There are things that iron finds that I find, and I'll open them years later, and something's happening still. It's changing.
It keeps evolving. And if you look at this one, this is where the metal rods of the iron, fork or was here. But you see that all this white, this is the rust and cement that has been developed and that permeated the bone. So the first thing you need to do when you restore this is to scrape away any of these elements
here. So where it's been touching, you need to get rid of.
Otherwise it keeps eating the bone and permeating it.
So it's like a filling.
Doing
a filling on a tooth, isn't it? You need to get all the stuff out. So actually, what I just that's a cool thing too. That's a napkin ring.
It's a napkin ring. It's Victorian to early 20th century. Again, it's bone, and it has a 3-hand engraved on it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that old, but it's handmade and
it's
therefore special.
Lovely thing all the same, exactly. And you mentioned leather. Mm-hmm. We're going to do a really good transition into leather, because the reason being, so I've got some bones and bits here that I did bring some in that aren't worked bones. They are clearly just butchery chops, and I wanted to show you just where bits have been chopped off on the bone. What also, I've got these as well. And the thing about these, interestingly, I think you actually solved this by finding the Lisa Yeoman's article. These are bits of bone that they've been butchered, and they've been through a tannery.
Yep.
a tanner's yard, and they all have one really interesting feature, which is this drilled hole. All of them have
a specific circle.
And this is a man-made hand-drilled hole through here.
So the reason why they were made, according to this paper that I found, is that, you know, from an animal you would not throw away anything.
No.
But as for you taught me today about the pins, that different people do different parts of the pin. So for the animal, different people do different steps.
Right.
So you would have the butcher that kills the pig.
That's right. There are like 4 different people in a tannery, and you have the light skinners, the heavy skinners, and I can't remember what all the terms are.
And even before going to the tanneries, you know, you would have somebody that would kill the animal, somebody that would butcher the animal.
So someone slaughtering, someone butchering.
And then the butcher, though, had to know that if he was going to a tanner or not.
That's right.
If that was the case, that's when the holes were drilled. Because what that would do is that there was, and now, like, animal lovers like me, I'm sorry, but this happened and this still happens.
Also, I'm a vegan, so there we go.
Oh.
So don't worry. We've got the golden ticket.
But now it's like the bloody part of the today.
We can do it.
Is, you know, you would slaughter the animal.
Yeah.
You would cut it from the middle here. You would separate the skin from the muscles.
Yeah.
Take away the whole carcass. But instead of opening fully, what you would leave attached to the carcass was the back posterior bones from the knee down.
Right.
There was not much meat there. But the reason it was useful is once you remove the whole carcass, but you leave that, through these bones, okay, where the leather is still attached, you have the foot and then the rest of the leather.
Yeah.
You would drill a hole that goes from here to here. Mm-hmm. And there you would put a rope through it, a rope.
Yeah.
And then you would hang the animal through the bone.
So that is how.
And then you could transport it from the butcher to the tannery.
That's so interesting.
It reaches the tannery, they don't need the leather around the leg, so they just chop it off.
So they take the top bit that they need. The meat goes.
The meat was already taken before.
So they chop the bone.
And then they work the leather. And these are the offcuts.
So these are the offcuts from those bones where they have done the thing all the way through. I had
to transport
no
them.
idea. That is so interesting. Well, there you go. I had no idea.
And it's fully preserved.
I knew.
It's like 2 handles of a big leather handbag.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry.
With the shape of a cow. It's awful. But
it is, but you know what? There was not much in the way of vegan handbags.
It's survival. I mean, at the time, it's survival.
Yeah, exactly. It was necessary. So
and there was a huge respect for the animal because you would not throw away a single bit.
And I was saying to you earlier about, I think they're called horn cones, or no, cores, horn. So the cones, the horns that were used on the animal were removed. They were
as the top of a horn. It's a deer, probably, or
there we go. So it's this inside bit, I think.
Spongy bit.
Yeah, that was removed. I need to read some more about it because maybe I'm talking at cross purposes, but there were bits that were used even in structures to make like doorway arches. I think there's a place, Greenwich Way, there is a doorway arch made of offcuts of bone that's come from a tannery, and they were the horn cores. And anyway, really fascinating stuff. Yeah, everything was used.
Everything was used.
So we've got a bit of a rain situation going on, and what we're going to do is retreat. We're going to go for cover. But before we do, you brought this in because...
Well, it's in the theme. We show bones, we say every single piece of the animal was used.
I love this.
This is a Victorian butcher.
Tile from a butcher
shop.
Probably
was in the back of the butcher or probably in the front of the shop.
Amazing.
And therefore it would tell you what it is. It's behind the counter to say, hey, this is what we sell.
We're selling this meat, this is our product. That is really incredible. I love it. So what we're going to do is head under some shelter, and we have got something else related to tanneries, tanning, bone, leather. Let's go and check that out now.
Let's go and check it.
Okay. Okay, come over to our little section that we prepared earlier. So, what have we got here? Our seamless segue from bones to tanners, tanneries, leather. Here we go. I must admit first, I am not much of a leather collector because It is a heck of a job to preserve, restore, preserve, and to keep leather. I don't tend to have the patience for it myself. Obviously, you've done a really good job here.
Well, you see 2 shoes here. I have 7 or 8 still at home.
Yeah.
This was found yesterday. I knew I was going to meet you today.
This is fresh from the mud.
Fresh from the mud. It stayed there overnight, but it gives you an idea of, you know, how you would find the shoes in the mud.
Yeah.
A shoe in the mud. And these are actually just, you know, other bits and pieces. It's a long process to turn something like this into this.
Yeah. So this now can live out of water, and if it gets wet, it shouldn't get wet now.
It shouldn't get wet. If it gets wet, it's not too big of a deal. I mean, it's not museum quality preservation.
But it looks pretty good.
It looks pretty good. This is my first ever preserved shoe.
Yeah.
You can tell it's not as good preserved as this one because it's quite more shiny, and you may see there are crystals inside.
I see.
So I didn't allow the minerals that were impregnating the leather to be dissolved long enough.
So okay, let's go through it. So when you find a leather shoe, now this is my basic knowledge, you find a leather shoe, it's in the mud. The mud is anaerobic, so it has no oxygen in it. It keeps this shoe preserved. The minute it starts to come out, it starts to erode, and it's gonna, you know, break up into nothing. So when you find leather, I think you put it in, if I remember correctly, this is from years ago, in a freezer bag.
Well,
some people
you know,
some water.
It depends how flexible your partner is.
Right.
In my case, that's not an option to go in the fridge
Inflexible.
or in the freezer. That's not an option. So you need to work around family.
Yeah. Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So, and again, there are many methodologies, right?
Yeah.
There is one that has been published a few decades ago by the British Museum.
Right.
It's extremely long and complex. It's for sure the most accurate and the one that would allow leather to preserve for centuries, right? I don't do these methods because it's quite expensive to find the chemicals to do that, and second, it's even more elaborate and time consuming.
Okay.
So I would say these shoes will be preserved for a few hundred years probably if they're kept inside.
So the basic at-home method that you go to is?
Which is a combination of tips from different great
different Mudlarks. I got mine from Monica.
You know, Floor Finds, Monica again, you know, Mudlark Thames. It would be, the way I do it is, the first thing you need to do, so when you find something like this, first you find it, if you find it already on the foreshore, like in the gravel, you usually find a fragment of it.
Exactly, you find a bit kind of dried out a little bit, definitely like fraying or
and kind of like broken down, because the leather is so fragile that it takes 2 waves to keep fragmenting it. So when you see like something coming out, you collect it, you take it out of the mud. The first thing you do, you very gently wash it.
Yeah.
I use a toothbrush, the soft
soft
bristle, and then very gently in a bucket of water, I start brushing it away, change the water, mud away, and I do it until the water from this gentle brushing is clear.
Right. Wow.
The fact that the water is clear, it doesn't mean that there's no minerals and mud inside.
Which will further degrade the shoe.
Correct. And it will harden the shoe after a while, like in this case.
I have a few hardened
pieces. It re-cements,
right? Yeah.
The leather re-cements or gets hard for 2 reasons.
Yeah.
One is because the elastic proteins and elements of the organic leather that are in it have been washed away by all the washing that we do to it. The second is because there are minerals that we don't wash away, and therefore they re-cement and re-hardens it.
Right.
So the way to wash them away that I use is that I put the leather that has been cleaned with a brush into a bag of water, or
this is the
for
freezer
a week.
Bag I was thinking of. Right, you put it in a bag,
but not in the freezer.
Not in the freezer.
I just leave it out.
Yeah.
And
in
then
the water.
And then every week I change the water.
Right.
Now in the summer a week is a bit too long; it starts smelling. I would do it, I don't know, every 3 or 4 days. But what you need to do is you need to keep changing the water, even if it's always clean, because the minerals are not necessarily colored.
So this is to wash out the minerals and anything that will destroy the leather.
Correct. That will harden the leather, but also, you're right, also destroy.
Yeah.
So once you've done this for at least, I would say, I do it for 6 weeks for safety.
6 weeks.
It's patience.
Yeah, right? My goodness me. So you're doing this bag method, keeping it, checking it, like you're It's like your child.
It is. And you know, sometimes I do it for longer just because I procrastinated.
Yeah.
Because then to move from the washed part to this, it takes forever.
Right.
So you do this, you now have a washed shoe.
Yeah.
Some Madlarks, they think like they for them it's the final stage.
That's it.
They restore the shoe, so they restitch it together and they start using leather oils to keep it soft.
And you keep it moist and leather oil.
And you treat it consistently. Yeah. I do an intermediate step that I've read about. Probably it's not necessary, but I've now learned to do it. Which I do a mixture of glycerin and ethanol.
Right.
Which again, the original chemicals you should use are slightly different in composition, but the idea is the same. Alcohol.
Yep.
To clean bacteria, kill anything that would, and the glycerin, which is the softener, right? It's a very oily substance. Yeah. So you make a combination of the two of them. You put the leather soaking in it. I usually keep it for 2 weeks. They say it's enough.
Wow. Wow.
After that, you take it out. The leather is soft, it's beautiful. Now, if you let it harden though in the air, right, without giving the shape that you want, by the time then you want to change the shape, to reconstruct it, it will break.
It will snap.
It will snap.
Yeah.
So you take it out of your ethanol glycerin mix.
Yeah.
You create a shape. The way I do it, different methods. One is
so you could stuff it and pad it.
You stuff it,
pins.
but again, when you take this apart, and I show you in a minute.
Yeah.
Every single stitch is gone.
Yeah.
So you end up with 7, 8, 10 pieces of a shoe.
Oh man!
You need to know where to put it, and there are books that I bought to understand in the different periods how they would put together pieces of leather. And in every different centuries, they will use a different stitching method as well.
Right.
I'm not good enough to repeat the stitching method. I use my own stitching method, but there is a variety of methods to do so. So you take it out of the ethanol and glycerol, you need to already have a sort of frame that you've built for the shoe.
Right.
And then you put the pieces roughly where they have supposed to be.
Yeah.
The way I do it is I put the different soles, sometimes 2 or 3 from one shoe, one on top of each other as they're supposed to be. I create a sort of stuffing made of either a cotton, piece of cloth, or I take paper towel.
Yeah.
And then I put the top leather as it's supposed to be, the heel, and then I use a really thin garden wire to just hold it together.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of taxidermy. Just
really?
Like taxidermy, like when you're taxidermying an animal, it's the same principle. You stuff it, you're holding it with pins, you shape it, because otherwise it will just flop. Continue.
No, I'm not familiar.
Please.
That's why I was I'm not familiar with the taxidermy method. So then you put it together. You let it slowly dry.
Yeah.
And then when it's not fully dried, but then you start stitching it, and that's what I had to do with this one.
Right.
So let's look at the 3 stages,
so
right?
This is the
you go on the foreshore, you find this one, you're really excited, you start pulling it. As soon as you start pulling it, it breaks apart.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you do it with this one, like you see, the leather breaks extremely easily.
I've done that before. I've pulled a shoe out thinking, it's a shoe, brilliant, and it's half the shoes left behind.
You need to be super delicate.
Yeah.
You need to go home with all the mud attached. Don't attempt to wash it. You destroy it.
So you keep it.
I keep it as it is. Wrap it in whatever it is.
Yeah.
Bring it home. Now this is a shoe. I don't know the age yet, to be frank. That's fine. From the just rough look and where I found it is probably 18th century.
Yeah.
Would I bet on it? Not yet. No.
Yeah.
But let's say that, right? Now something interesting on this one is, you see, it's got at least 2 layers of sole.
Oh gosh.
There is one inside and one outside.
That's fascinating.
Actually, now that I've opened it for the first time,
there's another. Is there?
It is another. Well, there is also a this is quite common in leather shoes from medieval times already, to have pieces of leather to reinforce this.
Okay.
The 2 soles with the body of the shoes were sewn together, sometimes from the inside out, and they were reflipped. Sometimes they were sewn as they are now. Actually, looking at the shoe, it looked to me that could almost be probably even Victorian. I don't know.
Yeah.
We will see when it's washed. But so what I do, you see that this actually has been consumed most likely by the walking.
The wear of that.
This is really the wear for walking.
And that's the ball of the foot, isn't it? You see.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And then what you start doing is, piece by piece, you wash it. If you are not sure where pieces go, take pictures while you dismantle it.
Like a puzzle, you can put it all back
together. You kind of
together.
say, oh, I remember that. Some mistakes I've done in the past is that I've mixed in the same bag different shoes.
Oh.
And eventually, luckily, I had pictures.
Yeah.
Of when I dismembered each of them.
Yeah.
So
dismembered.
Well,
yeah.
You know, these are unassembled, disassemble
I love
them.
it, dismembered, yeah.
So you wash them, you do the procedure we mentioned.
Yeah.
You put them in the bags, and then you take them out eventually. Yeah. And you end up with the single pieces.
Oh man, and you can see just from like
it's falling apart.
This today.
Look at that.
But that will be okay in the end.
That is okay. I mean, this is how I transported home. This is
wow.
It is heavily damaged, and there's nothing you can do. Like when the leather is gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
So in this case,
when I see this, I think that's so disheartening. You know, but you're saying this one here.
It was not in a much better shape than this one,
wow.
and you can tell because I mean this was found completely flattened.
Yeah.
This was already heavily damaged, and as you see, there's not much you can do.
I see.
Like the leather, it's slowly going.
But you can see, you know, it's the shoe. You can see the shape. You can see it's a slipper-like shoe. You can see some details on it.
You can see the cuts there. I thought at the beginning it was a damage, and actually some shoes were actually decorated with lashes all around it. Right? There are holes. I presume there was
a ribbon,
or maybe just like a thread that was going through just to tighten the shoes to your foot. You see that here there is some stitching.
I can. Oh, look at that. It's like a sort of a little dart kind of.
A little dart. And probably there was a piece internally or externally that was linking the heel to the rest.
I see. Oh, sorry.
So all these pieces were detached. I had to restitch them, and if I flip it gently, you will see that, I mean, as I said, this is not 100% professional.
No, but this is your
But this is stitching. And these holes are the holes that were there originally.
So you've restitched through the same holes. That
even
is
here,
incredible.
like so. And the interesting thing is, once the shoe is dismantled, you actually can precisely see that, like, okay, that's the needle where from here went through here, because you see where it was pulled.
Wow.
And it just takes a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And these are like little hobnail studs on the back.
They are.
Almost. So what do you think the date on the around?
I believe this is a 17th century, 18th century.
Wow.
It could be Tudor. I mean
this style, yeah.
It could be Tudor. I think it's still like in the area where I found this one.
Yeah.
I found it one day with my friend Mark, Old Daddy Thames.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's the area where we usually find like 1650, 1710 coins. So it fits with the area.
Yeah. So that date, that kind of,
I mean, the river transports mixes.
It does, but there are things that don't move that far, actually, especially if they're freshly out.
And shoes, like a shoe would not be transported far, because if you transport it far, it gets destroyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, it's all conjectural, but the shape as well is quite indicative of a post medieval for sure.
Wow.
But kind of Tudor, 17th, 18th century.
It's incredible. You know, someone had their foot in that.
Yeah.
Someone hundreds of years ago.
And you can see like where the heel was hit.
It's remarkable. And you can see if you look down, I mean, you probably might not be able to see it, but when you look in, you can see like the grooves of toes.
Of the toes.
Yeah, the wear, because they would have had these things for a while.
Yeah,
and one
shoe that I'm restoring, it's actually, that is halfway through the process, I couldn't bring it today.
Yeah.
It has a hole of the thumb, of the big thumb that came out.
The big
toe that came out.
The toe thumb.
And then inside, they put another piece of leather to cover for the hole, and it's still there.
Amazing.
So you see the repairs that they've done.
So they've repaired their shoe because, you know, they would have had these pairs of shoes for a while, unless they were wealthy people. It's not like the fast fashion of today.
No. You will keep a shoe for a long time.
Yeah. Wow.
And the same reuse of the shoes is kind of can be observed in this little.
This is such a darling little shoe. Look at this.
This is more recent. It's likely Victorian.
Okay, I mean, you know, Victorian. Could you imagine? This could be for like I don't know what, like a 4, 5, 6-year-old child, or
probably a bit older.
It depends. Older. They would have been smaller.
They were a bit smaller.
They could have been selling on the street, selling stuff, going to work in these shoes. This
could have been Madlark kids. Well, probably they were bare feet. You know,
they were probably bare feet if they were Mudlarks. But you know, you never know. I mean, it's incredible. And what I love about this shoe so much, apart from all the seams and all the tiny little holes, you can see the stitching has been. Can I turn it over? I can see it's very fragile. the wear on the shoe, on the heel. I'm going to turn it back because there are some bits.
Oh, that's fine.
They're just mud bits, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But the wear on the heels, you were telling me earlier.
Well, I mean, they're all conjectures, but something you can see, as you said earlier, shoes were reutilized many times, right? And kids had to grow in the shoes even longer than they were supposed to wear them.
Right.
So something you see, and this is kind of shoe expert, an historical shoe expert pointed out for me, is that you see that the shoe is very deformed.
There's a lot of wear here, and that's bulging out there. Yeah. And
it's not necessarily related to just the mud squishing it. It's probably because a kid was wearing it longer than constantly, and the foot was too big for the shoe.
Right. So you can see here it's really bulging out.
It's bulging out. This is the metal. It's not the metal, but it's probably like hardened leather inside to keep the heel.
Yeah.
And it was pushing and growing.
And so it's like. And you were saying about this child in particular, perhaps.
Yeah, probably. The fact that it's so deformed, it looked like he had crooked legs.
Maybe rickets, or like some brittle bone, like a
something
bone.
that could most likely deform the way, his bone structure, and therefore the way this kid was walking.
Yeah,
which again, in Victorian time, it was extremely common. So it's.
You
very
had
plausible.
Malnourishment, poor living conditions. You had shoes that obviously aren't going to be pristine. It's a number of reasons. Exactly, it could have been too big or too small. So there we go. I mean, we've gone from bones, tanneries, pinners, leather. Okay, this episode is about bone first and foremost, but segueing into these
touches of leather,
because they're all in the connected mix, aren't they? Alessio, thank you so much for bringing all these finds, and it's amazing. So, and what we're going to do next time, we're going to go out and hit the foreshore and go and find some stuff. How about that?
Looking forward.
There'll be sometime in the future, me and Alessio going looking for stuff.
Let's do it.
Perfect, let's do it.